Good afternoon, beautiful people, and happy Wednesday. I have missed you all dearly. So from planning my son's birthday party to my little brother's graduation and grad party, it has been a week. So I just have one more promotion to go to this week for my little sister, and then I can breathe a little bit. On top of that, I have been having excruciating lower back pain. I am in pain right now. So I am clearly 33 going on 83. But enough about me, because while I've been gone, it's been a lot going on. It looks like New York Attorney General Letitia James just cannot stay out of the headlines, and this time it involves taxpayer money allegedly being misused. According to a new report, Letitia James is facing criticism over allegations that her office spent nearly $20 million hiring outside law firms to perform legal work that should have been handled by attorneys already employed by the Attorney General's office. The accusations are being raised by her Republican challenger, former federal prosecutor Sarita Komatoreddy. So let's talk about it. Welcome to Nellie Miranda. As always, please make sure you like, share, and subscribe to support the channel. Now, before we get ahead of ourselves, let's be clear. These are allegations. Letitia James denies any wrongdoing. Her office says that these attacks are politically motivated. Her challenger, Sarita Komatoreddy, said, quote, "The $10 million legal defense fund set aside for Letitia James' personal legal troubles is an insult to hardworking taxpayers who are already struggling with the highest costs in the nation," end quote. Look, even if you are someone who supports Letitia James politically, I think there are some very fair questions that deserve answers. Because whenever government officials spend millions of taxpayer dollars, I think the public has a right to know exactly where the money went and why. So let's start with the outside lawyer controversy. According to the report, critics are questioning why millions of taxpayer dollars have been directed toward outside law firms, despite the Attorney General's office already employing hundreds of lawyers whose job is literally to represent the state. It does not make any sense. Because if you already have an entire legal department, why are you paying private attorneys? And if those private attorneys are necessary, why are they necessary? What specific expertise was missing that the work could not be done internally? Those are all valid questions, and taxpayers have a right to know. Government agencies constantly ask for larger budgets. They constantly ask for more staff, and then they tell taxpayers that they need more funding. Yet somehow, after hiring all these people, we're still being told that they need to outsource work to expensive private firms. At some point, somebody has to point out that it is theft of taxpayer dollars. Now, one detail that has drawn additional attention is the fact that some attorneys connected to these firms reportedly made campaign contributions to Letitia James. Critics say that creates at least the appearance of a conflict of interest, even if no laws were broken. The New York article writes, Komatoreddy also questioned why James has allegedly spent tens of millions of taxpayer dollars to bring in outside law firms to represent her office. Around 145 lawyers at those same firms gave a combined $23,000 to James' campaign. Those included Davis Polk and Wardwell LLP, a ritzy white shoe firm that's on a $575,000 retainer to represent the AG's office in a sexual harassment suit filed by a former senior aide. Governor Kathy Hochul's husband, Bill Hochul, is paid roughly $1.3 million a year by Davis Polk, though he does not handle matters involving the state, according to the governor's financial disclosure form. So again, appearance matters, public trust matters, because government doesn't just have to avoid corruption, they actually have to avoid looking corrupt. Or do they just not care anymore? Now, here's where it gets a little bit more interesting. At almost the exact same time these questions were being raised about outside lawyers, another criticism of Letitia James made headlines, and this time, this one involves Medicaid. An opinion piece published recently argued that Letitia James has some explaining to do when it comes to Medicaid fraud enforcement. Now, why is this significant? Well, because the Attorney General oversees New York's Medicaid Fraud Control Unit. That is the division responsible for investigating fraud involving one of the largest government healthcare programs in the country. And if we are honest, fraud in government programs has become one of the biggest stories in America over the past few years. We've seen fraud in COVID relief programs. We've seen fraud in unemployment benefits. There's fraud in food assistance programs. We've seen fraud allegations involving nonprofit organizations. We've seen fraud involving education programs. And now Americans are paying closer attention, now more than ever, to where their taxpayer dollars are going. It's like the scales are falling from our eyes. The days of thinking that our tax dollars are being spent responsibly are over. So the criticism being raised is that New York spends enormous amounts of money through Medicaid and therefore should be aggressively pursuing waste, abuse, and fraud. In this opinion piece, the author writes, in terms of investigations per billion spent, New York's unit ranked 48th out of the 50 states. It was 49th in indictments per billion and 50th, dead last in convictions per billion. Since she became Attorney General in 2019, the number of annual fraud investigations has dropped 45%. Federal data indicates the national total also declined during those years, but by about a third as much. According to James, self-reported annual reviews, Medicaid recoveries by her office went from $168 million in 2019, her first year on the job, to just $31 million in 2024. So we have to keep in mind that New York also has one of the largest Medicaid budgets, second only to California's. So did fraud become non-existent in New York, or is this something else? One reason this issue is gaining traction nationally is because the Trump administration has made fraud investigations a major talking point. Vice President J.D. Vance recently emphasized fraud prevention efforts and the need to crack down on waste throughout government programs.
Let me just say that we've been hard at work over the last several months trying to make sure that we take care of the people's money and trying to make sure that the services that exist for the betterment of our fellow citizens, whether they're low-income kids who need access to food resources, whether they're low-income families who need access to medical benefits, that those programs are protected for the people who actually need them, that they don't exist to enrich fraudsters, but they exist for the American people for whom Congress has said they're entitled. And that's exactly what this fraud task force is about. One of the things that I thought going into it, but that I've learned about fraud, is that it always has two fundamental victims. The first victim is the American taxpayer, who is generously paid into these programs in an effort to give their fellow citizens a leg up. But it also has as its victims the people who are meant to benefit from these programs, who are not able to benefit, or maybe are benefiting less because of what a disaster some of the fraud has wrought in these programs.
Now, whether you agree with every proposal or not, I think most Americans support one simple idea. If somebody steals taxpayer money, they should be prosecuted. If somebody lies to obtain benefits, they should be prosecuted. And if somebody uses government programs as their personal ATM machine, they should go to hell. I'm just kidding. They should be prosecuted. That should not be controversial. And because Letitia James built much of her national reputation portraying herself as a corruption fighter, I would think that she would be hard-pressed going after Medicaid fraud in her state. Or is she only interested in pursuing high-profile investigations? But I want to hear from you. Do you believe hiring outside law firms was justified? And do you think New York is doing enough to combat Medicaid fraud? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and if you got any value from today's video, please make sure you like, share, and subscribe to support the channel, and ring the bell so you don't miss any future updates. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. And it won't be a week from now. Bye.